So we'll go with that. We can edit that off the video before we post it on YouTube. I'm kidding. Thank you all for coming. We're really excited to have this talk by, by Jordan, who has extensive experience with blockchain technologies and has taught multiple computer science classes for us and does a bunch of other stuff. So thank you for coming, and we'll turn the time over to you.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, the overview or the purpose of this is to really just discuss blockchain principles. We're going to go over a bunch of different areas, and hopefully we'll get through all of this, and we'll tack on NFTs on the end of it to discuss that as well. But one of the biggest things that I want to communicate, and I want all of you to understand by the end of this, is how blockchain is being used, how it can be used, and hopefully by the end of it, where you could be involved if you'd like to get involved down the road. So a little bit about myself in very simple graphics. I got my undergrad at SVU. I put the lacrosse one there because I'm a lacrosse player, I was back in the day. Now I do a lot of coaching. But I graduated in 2011 and then worked at the school for 4 years as a database administrator, and then went directly from that into a master's program. I did a double master's at Instituto de Empresa, which is out in Madrid, and did an international MBA, and then a second master's degree in big data and business analytics. It was a wonderful experience. What that did, or IE itself, the university, its focus, what it's known for, and what it's ranked high for, is its entrepreneurial focus. So every single course that is taught there, whether it be marketing, whether it be accounting, what strategy, always has a component of it that is specifically, and how does this relate to an entrepreneurship venture, right? And then as a big part of the master's program, you have to develop your own company. That's like what you do. And most people will develop 2 or 3 different companies throughout the entire program. I was fortunate that the first one that we went with really took off. We ended up winning the majority, if not all, of the competitions that IE had for startups. And we caught the eye of some investors who ended up giving us a couple €100,000 to actually start our company coming directly out of the master's program itself. And that is Chango, or Chango Tech. You feel free to look it up, www.changotech.com. Plugs for myself. We started the company. It is a blockchain-based logistics company. We focus on SaaS software, so software as a service. And helping companies to get products from one end of the globe to the other, back in a much more secure environment than what tends to exist in most international trade today. Big reason that this came about, I was really interested in blockchain technology, haven't really touched it all that much. A buddy of mine was from South Africa, and his family had a wine business out of there, and he was telling us how every year it's just built into their business model. They're going to lose 2 to 3 ginormous containers full of wine because of bureaucracy, paperwork delays, and other issues that the wine is going to spoil. It just sits in a hot container in a port while they're trying to work out all the issues, and they'd lose, $30,000 or whatever it was, the value of that container. And it was just like expected. We know we will lose $60,000 a year because bureaucracy sucks. Whatever it might be, the system sucks. And so we brought, okay, well, how can blockchain technology help solve some of these current issues? And that's where Chango was originally born, and then we've iterated and evolved from that point into the company that's now. Now, my role is reduced with the company today. Big reason for that is the rest of the company is still out in Madrid. I am not in Madrid. I do have still too many 3, 4, 5 a.m. meetings, which are not particularly fun, but when you're 6 hours behind the rest of the board and everyone else, you tend to do that. So anyway, so I've now had my own blockchain-based company since we officially launched in 2017, started in 2016. So for some time, and I've been involved in the ecosystem for that entire time. So let's get into what is blockchain, okay? And actually, now that I think about it, I'll be honest, I'm not a great straightforward lecturer. It's just not the way that I like to do a lot of things. So if you've got questions, just raise your hand, bring them up, and I'm happy to pause. If it's a complete tangent, I'll probably say, hey, let's cover it at the end, but otherwise we'll just go crazy. We'll tackle it right then. Okay, so going into blockchain technology itself, what actually is it? The top one is the kind of official definition recognized by a lot of people. Big keywords, it's a shared, immutable ledger. You can have assets that are tangible or intangible on it. The bottom one is my own definition. That's a little bit simpler. It's a cloud-based database structure built on decentralized technology. Okay, big thing that I want to highlight, it is a cloud-based database, all right? Blockchain technology is a database, all right? So a lot of times when we talk about blockchain, we immediately associate it with the big things that we know, Bitcoin, right? Or Ethereum, or that's pretty much it for most people. But there's a lot of other things out there that you've probably at least heard of, NFTs, stuff along those lines, and that's kind of what we associate blockchain to being. But what the actual technology is, it's just a database, all right? So it's not like we completely created this brand new technology that's absolutely insane. Now, what makes this database function is why it is unique, why it has transformed a lot of industries, is continuing to transform industries, why it's being applied to traditional infrastructure to modernize it for today. Now, big reason. Most database systems are centralized database systems, right? You can think of like your classic server room inside of the building, right? You've just got walls of cords and boxes sitting on racks, and that's where the information's actually stored. Most companies are moving away from this regardless if it's blockchain or not. They tend to have cloud-based database services. SVU, for the most part, has moved away from a lot of that. We've moved a lot of our services to a cloud-based system as well. But they tend to still stay centralized to some capacity. So somebody is in control of all of your information. There's a central point of truth. There are some advantages to that, and there are many disadvantages to that. The blockchain-based system is different. It is decentralized. So there is a copy of the database in every, what we would call a node, but you can consider it a computer. All right, so let's say that I've got literally 15 laptops that are all running the database. They could be in 15 complete different locations, and they all have a copy of the database on them. All right, that should highlight, well, that sounds unique, and now it's like, wow, that sounds like a security concern at the same time. I'll address some of those. All right, a big thing that makes blockchain unique is how it actually stores data itself. Okay, the reason we call it a blockchain is you literally take information. So let's say that I want to do a transaction in a database. It could be as simple as adding a new row for a new person in my database, right? So it's a database of people. I've got now Jordan Sorensen. I just add him, age 32, whatever information is on there. I wish I was 32. That's all right. In a traditional system, it's all updated in the centralized system, and the centralized system will send it out to whoever's connected to it. In the blockchain system, the first thing that it does is it takes that information and it wraps it in a block, okay? That's hence why we call it blockchain. That block has basically all the information that I want to commit to the database or the blockchain, right? And then it goes through what we call a consensus algorithm, which is how it actually gets added. I'll talk about that in a second. And then once it's approved, it gets added to the blockchain in a string of transactions. So just like it shows on here, you've got block 1, block 2, block 3. In a real blockchain that's active, you've got hundreds of thousands, millions of blocks. It'll just get bigger. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. There's advantages, disadvantages to that as well. But each one of those blocks has information stored on it from the previous block, okay? So what that does, first and foremost, is make it that if I want to hack the system, if I want to hack SVU's database, right? If I knew where to go and how to get into that database, theoretically, I could change anything I wanted. I could go in there and I could update people's contact information, I could change people's salaries, I could do all sorts of stuff. Now, there are, of course, in a traditional system, fail-safes to try to catch these things, but at the end of the day, if you really know what you're doing and what you're trying to attack, you can do a lot of damage before anyone will notice, if they ever notice, okay? This is why you always hear about, concerns on general databases. You know, how many hacks have we heard about in the last 10 years? Target gets hacked, Equifax gets hacked, information's leaked, you know, all this different kind of stuff. And that's a huge concern. In the blockchain world, well, first and foremost, let's talk about changing information. If I try to go into the database, and let's say that I've got 15 laptops running the database, right? And I get into one of them, and I'm like, you know, I've got access to the database now. I'm going to say that my account actually has 15 Bitcoin in it instead of 0.00001 or whatever it might be, right? Then, in my mind, well, I just fooled the system. In all reality, the other systems will all look at it and go, wait a minute, why do ours all say 0.0001 and this one says 15? And why is this trying to make this transaction? And they will reject it. Basically, what it does is highlight errors in the system and kicks them out, making blockchain by far the most hack-proof database system in the entire world. It's the reason that Bitcoin and these currencies that have high dollar value can be based in this technology without everyone every single day freaking out that someone could be hacking and stealing all of their Bitcoin. Consensus algorithms. This is how these 15 laptops all agree on what's correct and not correct inside of the blockchain itself. Okay? There's a lot of information on here. The core things to remember are probably the types. You have proof of work, which is by far the most known, most popular, maybe. It's also what Bitcoin and Ethereum currently run. It's also the reason that climate activists are not huge fans of Bitcoin currently, because proof of work essentially requires computers to solve extremely complex mathematical problems, and the first one that does it gets the right to post the information to the blockchain itself. And this system allows you to ensure that the information is accurate and that the computers are all agreeing that this information is correct. Things like, okay, if I want to send a Bitcoin to this address that's going to be checking things like, do you actually have a Bitcoin to send? Is the address you're sending to valid? Is your address valid? You know, things along those lines, plus a bunch of other very complex mathematical things that are specifically designed for computers, so you won't even understand them even if you get a hold of them. It's great. The more computer processing power you have, the more likely you are to commit the block, the more likely you are to collect that small fee for contributing to the network and make money. Which is why you hear about people making lots of money in Bitcoin mining or whatever it might be. This is the process they're doing. They literally leave a computer on that is going at full volume. You know when your computer's going, you hear the fan going, you can tell your computer's working hard? That's those computers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to compete and solve these mathematical equations. Each time they do, they make X amount of money. People make a lot of money on it, but it takes a lot of energy. They say the Ethereum network alone uses up enough energy to power a medium-sized city, so about the size of Roanoke. To run the Ethereum network uses up that exact same of energy, and it's only growing, which is why people like Ethereum are moving to proof of stake, which is the second one on here. Proof of stake is a different, all of these are just different ways of tackling this consensus of securing information on the blockchain in ways that make the most sense. Notable things I'll actually point out here on the bottom. You obviously have Bitcoin with proof of work. Proof of stake, they have Dash on here. There's plenty of others that use it, but it's what Ethereum is moving to. BitShares for DPoS. Stellar, which is a financial transaction platform I'm actually quite fond of, has Byzantine fault tolerance, which basically, the fault tolerance you hear a lot with blockchain, it just means that the network can accept a level of fault, so a bad actor. So if you've got that renegade node that somebody tried to hack, change information on, or whatever it might be, the system is built to properly ignore that type of bad information. And then finally a DAG, which is IOTA. This is an unproven method. If successful, will be huge. But IOTA's been saying that for the last 6 years, and it has yet to be successful. So we'll see where that one goes. It's important to note because IOTA is a really big project, but they are currently the only big blockchain that uses this. Okay, a lot of gobbledygook information on here, which I'll just summarize very quickly. You are welcome to read what you can. But these are just going to be some really key points on blockchain itself. I'll just go through the headers and a little description of them. Distributed ledger technology, again, it's that database. When we're saying that ledger, it's keeping track of where currency is. So if you've got coins or whatever it might be in an account, it's keeping track of all of that. Plus, now it's keeping track of NFTs, it's keeping track of contracts, does a lot of other things. Immutable records, this leads to the immutable records themselves. That information you store on the blockchain can't be hacked and altered or modified by bad actors, or even yourself. You can't even go in necessarily and just change, you can't go in and change your history. Smart contracts, we'll get into smart contracts later. And some explanations here on the right. Obviously, as each transaction occurs, it is recorded as a block of data. That block of data is chained together, hence the name blockchain. It's also the reason that if I have an account, today I have 1 Bitcoin, tomorrow I have 2 Bitcoin, I can never erase from the history that at one point I had 1 Bitcoin. The network will reflect that I currently have 2, but if I look back to block 250 or whatever block was that was committed when I got my first Bitcoin, it will show my account had 1 Bitcoin in it at this block. Okay, so you can change information that's in the blockchain, but you cannot alter the history of it. So you can imagine how valuable this is for someone trying to do an audit trail. In a typical database structure, if I want to change information, we have what are called tables for computer science, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone else, well, just to summarize it, you do like addresses, right? A person's address, all of your address information is located in its own kind of box inside of a traditional database. And then your name, first name is in another box, and then they're connected by a key. And that's how you know that this address goes with this person, right? If I want to update the address table for a traditional database, I just want to change your address to your new one, 99.9% of tables or databases are going to say this table or this field or this row was updated on this day at this time, which is great. But if I want to know who changed this one field to this and what was it before it got changed, that's actually pretty hard in most databases to find and to understand, right? It's easy to understand when all the information was changed, but that one specific key important piece of information, oftentimes like, I don't know, it was like Tuesday or something. That's pretty much what the database tells you. You don't get that specific. In a blockchain-based system, you always will. You have a very concrete audit history out of it. Okay, make sure I'm not going too long. And then that's the irreversible side that we talked to there on the bottom. Okay, let's talk smart contracts. Yes?
So Jordan, so in accounting, this becomes super important because everything is always there.
Yep. You have the full, not only current record, but historical accuracy of the accounts involved on the blockchain itself.
But with repentance, God's going to forget what blockchain's not.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good.
I like that.
I'll have to steal that one.
Okay.
T-shirts.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about, the blockchain can be very unforgiving.
Okay. Can I ask one other question? So, and this may be kind of pedantic, and you're maybe going to get to it, but is how many are there of these? Is there one created for each company, or does it belong to the firm that is providing the blockchain, and it's just all part of one big network? Or?
So, a few different ways to answer it, and it really depends on what the company or entity wants to do.
Okay.
There is an endless amount of blockchains and an endless amount of currencies or tokens that are on those blockchains.
Okay.
The most well-known ones, Bitcoin network, Ethereum network, Stellar's up there, Quorum's up there. I mean, there's a bunch of well-known ones, but I mean, I've created my own blockchain. I've created my own tokens. I would love to create the Night token. I think we should. Nightcoin. I think we should do it. In fact, an example, if you're really interested, I'm happy to share the information. That's what IE did. As part of their venture lab, their master's program created their own cryptocurrency specifically for the master's program for them to experiment in the technology and become more familiar with how it works and everything else. I think it's a fantastic idea, but we can talk about that later. But the key thing here is, it depends. Most people don't want to run their own blockchain. And the reason is, it takes high computational power, it takes a lot of knowledge. You don't want to be the one that screws that part up, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of risk in being the one building it and trying to make sure it's secure, it follows the algorithm, the consensus algorithm and everything else. What most companies will do is they will join an existing blockchain, and they will either just write to the blockchain, so they'll have some access point or API connection to the blockchain itself, and they'll do it transfer information that way, or they will join what's called a consortium. This is probably most popular in a lot of businesses, which basically would be like, let's talk about international trade. You would have a lot of the parties involved in international trade join a consortium, which means they basically have their own blockchain specifically and only for them and their suppliers. And so they're the ones that are running the 15 laptops are distributed to all of the business entities inside of that consortium. And so you know the other actors that are involved. And then you're just using the computer system to basically serve as what's hosting and storing your information that's being transferred between the various parties in your consortium. So you'll have the main three ways to interact with blockchain. You have a public blockchain, which is something like Ethereum, which anyone can start up a node for Ethereum. You can run it off of this laptop right here, easy. Well, easy, it's going to take a lot of power, but it will run it. And that'll run just fine. Public blockchains you can interact directly through. There's plenty of API services, like Infura is a very popular one for developers. They basically have all of their bunch of hosted nodes that do all the heavy lifting, and then you just kind of connect to their gateways to the blockchain, and they do all the middleman stuff. You have a private blockchain, which basically it's kind of the consortium model, but it could be internal. A private blockchain could be one computer. It doesn't make much sense to do that, but it could be one computer that I just run on my local net. And in fact, the majority of development that I do in blockchain is on a private network, because I'm just testing things. But you can absolutely run a private network, and that's actually popular if you only want it to run inside of your own company and you want complete control. You'll run 15, 16 nodes or laptops inside of your own company, and they'll all just be running it. And then the consortium being the joining of various companies inside of it. So you have private, public, and consortium are kind of the three main modes to interact with blockchain. Smart contracts. Vitalik, who is the founder of Ethereum and currently worth $15 billion, something along those lines. Really wish I started Ethereum. He's only like 34, 33, something like that. Really weird guy though. Interviews with him are always interesting. Anyways, he's called this the worst mistake he ever made when developing blockchain, was calling it a smart contract. Because it's a very dumb contract, it just does smart things. But people always kind of get confused. But to explain what a smart contract really is, a traditional contract, as it shows here, you have your parties involved, you have your written contract, then you have to have a third party that's involved in the process, whether that be the courts, whether that be lawyers, whether some intermediary, if not multiple intermediaries, are involved in getting that contract signed, notarized, and approved. And then finally, the execution of it. One thing that this doesn't illustrate here is the interpretation of a contract. If you're involved in business at all, you will know quickly that just because it says this on paper doesn't necessarily mean that it can only be interpreted one way. And there are plenty of lawsuits out there over, debating on what the terms or language of a contract really means or is intended to mean, and that can go to a lawsuit very easily. Smart contract, you have the parties involved, you have computer code, that is basically the terms of the contract written in computer code, and you have the execution. That's all you have. You cut out the middleman, you cut out the lawyers, you cut out all that other stuff. All that you have is, I am selling a guitar, you want to buy a guitar, I say that I will sell it for 13 Ether, let's say for a blockchain example, you say you'll buy it for that, hopefully you're not actually buying a guitar for 13 Ether, that's very expensive. Yeah, but it'd be a nice guitar. Then again, we buy monkeys for much more, so what can we do? Anyways, and then I give you the guitar, the money is instantly transferred over to me via the contracts that are tied to it itself. Okay, so when you agree to the contract, and then I send the guitar, then it says within X amount of days or whatever it is, the contract will execute and that money is automatically sent over to me. Okay, the advantages to this is it is arbitrated by the code. What the code says is what the contract will do. You cut out the interpretation, you cut out all of the, well, I think it really meant to do this. This is what it says that it will do. You do X, distribute Y, or whatever it might be, right? That's very advantageous. It speeds things up a lot. It is a lot more secure. Again, you're not worried about these third parties. We'll talk about some of the disadvantages down the road. But essentially, smart contract, and here's an example for those who are in computer science who understand this a lot more. This is a very simple smart contract just to store information to the blockchain. Again, if you do any computer programming, this is pretty straightforward and easy. All right, but it's very, very simple. All it is taking a number, putting it on the blockchain, and then giving you a way to retrieve that information. But smart contracts are very, very simple in practice, but obviously, like any programming, can get extremely complicated the more terms and conditions or desires. Things that I've built are contracts that help store documentation, execute authority of documents or ownership of documents, voting systems, various things. You can do quite a bit with these types of smart contracts. And they're getting better and better in practice as well. All right, let's talk some pros and cons. Investment. ICOs, huge in 2017. That's probably where the majority of people first heard of blockchain. I mean, ICOs are initial coin offerings. Imagine an IPO, which is when a stock goes to the stock market for the first time, and they ring the bell and all that stuff. Same concept, but on a blockchain. The interesting thing about most ICOs, and this was a big problem in 2017, basically everyone and their mom came out and said, hey, I've got a great idea. This is exactly how it's going to work. They write this nice fancy paper with all these cool graphs and all these different things. This is what I'm going to do. Please, we're going to release 20,000 of my token to help fund the project. Because it's going to be so big, get in now for the price of whatever it might be. and you can own X amount of tokens and be a part of our project. The downside is about 97% of those projects never actually became companies or realistic ideas. People invested hundreds of millions of dollars in ideas that never came to fruition. It's essentially like the greatest crowdsourcing scheme that was ever executed in like a large public way, and very few people were prosecuted by it. It was pretty dangerous stuff at the time. These are some of the few projects that were very successful, raised a lot of money. Again, a successful ICO, and there were many, raised easily over $1 million. Many hundreds of millions of dollars to fund their projects. Big things you'll notice here, Bitcoin icon, we will go with that. Ripple, which would be the one in the middle, Ethereum next to it, Ethereum Classic next to that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Litecoin, Monero's on here. A lot of these blockchain projects that are very successful today, but many of them failed. And as it says, up till today, to this point today, over 23 billion has been raised by blockchain companies. And so you can see there's money involved. You look at percentage of growth. So like if you're interested in a career in blockchain, which I would highly recommend because it's a very in-demand job right now. Average salary is $154,000 inside the United States. It can be much higher elsewhere. And then the desire for blockchain engineers, people particularly who know how to code Solidity, which is the code that I showed you earlier, but it's easily the #1 language for blockchain-based companies. All right, some security aspects of blockchain. This is things that I want to highlight for everybody to say. One thing I have to remind business people all the time, they have a lot of interest. Oh, blockchain, I hear all about blockchain. Tell me about blockchain. How's it going to do this? How's it going to do that? I always have to slow people down a little bit and say, look, I love the technology. I'm super excited about the technology. I think it does a lot. It's going to do a lot, but that's the key. It's still going to do a lot. It's not there yet. And this is what a lot of times we forget. Blockchain's only been around for 10 years, realistically, a little bit longer than that, right? I think it's like 13 years. But in practicality, and it's like even close to the modern iteration, it's actually only been about 7 years, I would say, 7, 8 years. About every 6 months, major upgrades, merges, important things inside of the blockchain ecosystem are still occurring, okay? This is one thing I have to remind people of. You're building on a technology that's very revolutionary for a lot of reasons. It's extremely exciting. It's also extremely new. So keep that in mind as you're building. A lot of potential, but there are risks involved. 51% attacks. Okay, so go back to our example of the 15 laptops, right? One laptop goes bad. The 14 are going to look at it and be like, nope, we're not accepting that. Someone's doing something bad, and reject a bad transaction, right? What happens if you manage to attack 8 of those laptops? Well, now, technically, your bad transaction has consensus. It now has over 50% of the participating laptops all say, hey, actually, this is a good transaction. And therefore, your bad transaction goes free. It's accepted by the network. Because that's how consensus is built, right? You reach a threshold, and things are approved. Well, and this is, you'll talk about risks with mining, a lot of mining practices. They literally sometimes we think of Bitcoin mining, we think of like the guy in his basement with his laptop, just like, make me money, make me money. But realistically nowadays, it's professionalized in a lot of areas, and there are companies that have, 1,500 laptops essentially, or servers sitting down in a room just mining Bitcoin all day. And when you own the majority of servers that are mining Bitcoin or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden you own 51%. Now that's hard to do because there are a lot of nodes out there, but if several of these mining pools, we call them, all were to collaborate and say, no, we want to do our own thing, theoretically, they could achieve a 51% and attack a network itself. So this is a risk. Is it a massive risk that you need to be concerned about with most stable blockchains? No. Like Bitcoin, I wouldn't be concerned about it. Like at a broad level, Ethereum, definitely not. But that, just something to consider. All right, blockchain endpoint vulnerabilities. And this is actually similar to phishing attacks in the sense that, sure, your information is secure on the blockchain, but as secure as your password is, right? So the same thing as like a typical thing. You lose your key, private key it's called, which is kind of what unlocks your account, or somebody steals that from you. Theoretically, they could access your entire blockchain account and transfer it to their own or do whatever they want with it. So there definitely are some vulnerabilities in the sense that it's as vulnerable as you as an individual are in many cases. Routing attacks, trying to take information right at the ISP level. So steal information right as it's getting from your computer to Cox before it goes to the World Wide Web, trying to steal that information at that point. Much, much harder to do, but it has happened in a few cases. Phishing attacks, trying to, again, steal your information. This actually is one of the most predominant scams for blockchain. That you're in Coinbase or one of these very fancy exchanges, and you'll get an email that says, hey, we're trying to verify your information, can you do this or that? And people fall for it and they give their key out, thinking they're talking to Coinbase and it's someone scamming them and they steal all their stuff. Transaction privacy leakage, this is a concern. A public blockchain, something to consider, is public, right? So if I want to store information that I think is private on a public blockchain, anyone that knows what they're looking for can find your private information and share it. An example of that would be trade secrets, okay? You can store anything you want on the blockchain. I can say, hello, my name is Jordan, and literally write that sentence and store it on the blockchain if I really want to, okay? For that, that's totally fine, like who cares? But what if I'm trying to execute a transaction to not just send money, but vital information for a company, like how many, and let's talk about shipping or logistics, how much wine am I sending to this location? You can have all of the relevant information, that cargo load. To you, probably means nothing. To the right competitor, that's valuable information to know exactly what they're doing when they're doing it. So you got to be aware that public blockchain is public. There's ways to attack that, ways to obfuscate information, other things, but it is what it is. Dead addresses, theoretically, if I send block or Ethereum to an address that nobody has the private key for, that money is gone. There is no recover feature. There is no forget my password. Please help me recover my password. You lose your private key, you are out of luck. And this is a big issue. In fact, Spain banned cryptocurrencies from being used in practice for 1 year because literally just a guy trying to do his best at his new blockchain job accidentally transferred 12 million euros to a dead address. Gone. No recovery. You can imagine that guy had a bad day. So there is some definitely risk in that. You got to be very comfortable in what you're doing in the sense that I know what I'm sending and who I'm sending it to and that this is the right address.
Get a tattoo.
Yeah, something. Contract security, and this is where we'll bring up the DAO. One of the more fascinating aspects of blockchain history. The DAO itself is decentralized autonomous organization. Honestly, it's one of the more revolutionary aspects of blockchain technology. It is more often than not being applied to investing, financial investment. Essentially what the DAO is it's a hedge fund, or it's one of these big investment firms that is completely run by consensus and computer code. Okay? You join the DAO, you commit 10 Ether, whatever it might be, to the DAO fund, and then you as a collective group, through anonymous consensus, vote on where investments should be, how they should be, things along those lines, and then people get paid out according to the contracts written inside the DAO. Okay? It, in many ways, is revolutionary. You don't have those human middlemen taking X percentage, because the DAO doesn't need to collect money. All it's doing is distributing, listening to the voice of everyone that's communicating, and then sending the payouts as money comes in, or accepting the losses as losses come in as well. The downside is, when the DAO was released in 2017, I believe it was, again, revolutionizing things. You had all the big crypto players were involved in it. If you were like a big crypto person, chances are you were in the DAO. And then one really smart guy looked at the DAO, and again, if it's in a public blockchain, it is public. That includes the computer code, the smart contracts themselves. Okay? He went through and looked over every single line of code and he found a vulnerability. And he basically took, I think it was like $52 million worth of Ethereum, or Ether, and siphoned it out to his private account. Drained the entire investment fund. Now, it was complicated because in reality, he did not do anything that the code did not allow him to do. Right? So you can't even really accuse him of theft because he literally did what was written in the contract. There was just a vulnerability that somebody left in their computer code that he then exploited to extract all that monetary value. Now, obviously, you can attack that and say, well, he clearly broke the spirit of the contract. But again, smart contract doesn't really care about spirit. This is the code. It's written this way. This is how it's executed. Ethereum ended up doing what's called a fork, or they basically went back before the transaction happened and just kind of started fresh from that point, walking in a new direction. And it's the big reason if you look on any of these exchanges, Coinbase, any of them, you'll see Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. Ethereum Classic is the original Ethereum token before it was forked by the DAO.
Don't buy Ethereum Classic.
What was that?
Don't buy Ethereum
Yeah, I would not recommend Classic. Although it had a nice spike last year, but yeah, I would not bet on it. All the investment energy is in regular Ethereum. But it also highlighted a potential, not just security risk, but a flaw with blockchain technology. What did we all say at the beginning? It's immutable. You can't change what's on it
Unless you control 51%.
unless everyone agrees. Which in this case is exactly what happened. The founders of Ethereum literally sent out a giant poll to every participating node on the Ethereum network and said, will you guys agree to fork this with us because of this bad actor, blah, 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 all this different stuff. And 51% of everyone agreed. Fork away. So, I say it's a fascinating use case and I highly recommend reading on it if you're interested in it, in the technology. All right, use cases. Decentralized finance. This is one of easily the hottest areas for it. And this is the ability, one of the greatest advantages. I lived in Spain for 5 years of my life now. Okay, one thing that I became acutely aware of, if I'm short on money, getting me money quickly is not an easy task. Okay, it's just not. There's no good way to say it. If you lose your credit card, if you lose access to your bank or whatever it might be, good luck. Western Union is your best bet. And even then, you pay a 50% upcharge to send it immediately, essentially, or you wait 3 or 4 days for that cash to come in. And I mean, there's a reason that the stranded in Europe scams, work in those phishing attacks. It's unfortunately based in a real situation that could theoretically happen to somebody. Anyways, it's a pain in the butt to get money over there. Even now, I get what I do get paid from Chango, my company still. It gets dropped in my Spanish bank account. I've got to personally go and transfer it all to my U.S. account. It takes 3 days. What was it? March of last year, it took 32 days to get my money over. I'm literally calling everyone like, where's my money? And they're like, nah, it should get there. That was literally the response I got from the banks. I was furious. That was a very frustrating time. But it highlighted, with blockchain technology, I can send 1 Ether to literally anywhere in the world. It'll take approximately 35 seconds. You can see some advantages to that. Not just in the personal side of it, but the business side of it. You want to execute a contract, no longer do we need to wire money for big dollar contracts. You can literally execute it and have those done today, money exchanging hands in a new account where it needs to be today with a full audit history of everything that just happened. Okay? Decentralized finance is doing a lot of things, so much so that the heaviest investors of this type of blockchain technology are banks. Because they fully recognize the world's changing and we're kind of the antiquated model. So catching up is something we want to do if we want to keep lining our pockets. You have lending platforms which are big, which can be all your exchanges, but they literally, like for instance, my Coinbase account, I get an advertisement every single time I log in that says, hey, did you know that we will lend you $2.5 thousand today with your Bitcoin as collateral. I get that notice every single day. I can easily borrow on my existing Bitcoin on the platform. And it's the same thing like a traditional thing. I pay a percentage off of it, everything else, but it's all done through the blockchain, through the tokens, and it's done immediately.
But the banks are frustrated because this is not regulated, right? It's outside of the playing grounds.
Yep. Yeah, and country to country as well. It's different. And this is why Ripple, one of the more well-known blockchains out there, has been in a huge battle with the SEC for the last year, basically, over its listing if it's a security or a, I'm trying to think what else they're defining it as. Anyways, but how they're defining what this cryptocurrency actually is. Is it money? Is it an asset? Is it what is it? And the SEC has been, doesn't help when we change presidents and different administration in there and everything else, and everyone has just different views on it. But it complicates things for sure. The governments are very concerned about it, and this is the reason why the U.S., amongst with many other governments, are looking at, well, if this is going to happen regardless, how can we get it on the system? And they're looking at building their own tokens that properly represent the U.S. dollar, or whatever it might be. And there are some countries that have already launched this. Was it Venezuela? No, Ecuador? No. One of the South American countries now officially accepts Bitcoin at a government level as part of one of their currencies.
And the U.S. cryptocurrency is regulated as possessions, and you have to pay the tax at the time of mining for the value.
That's new though. That's like
That is new.
That's like last week new.
And it's tough for Bitcoin miners. Let's just say government's like, wait, somebody's making money? I think we can take some of that. That's kind of what it feels like in this case, but it is what it is. Stable coins. Stable coins are maybe my favorite idea in blockchain currently, and that's the existence of a currency that basically sits one-to-one with a fiat currency, or let's say the US dollar. DAI is one of my favorite ones. DAI coin, which you can find on Coinbase or any of the exchanges, is always worth $1. Always. Okay? And what that means is that now I have a means, so this is an investment trick that the IRS is not terribly fond of, but it is what it is. I sold, for instance, what did I do? I had $1,000 in gains on another cryptocurrency, right? I transferred it to DAI. Now, because I transferred it, it is still technically in cryptocurrency asset form. I have not exchanged it for fiat currency, and therefore I cannot be hit with capital gains. All right? Basically, they can't tax me on that transaction. It's sitting in a stable coin. Now, I've also eliminated the risk. It's no longer in Ethereum and blockchain and Bitcoin that can go like this. I mean, you'll hear sometimes it went up by 10%, down by 30% in a single day, or stuff like that. I mean, it's a wild investment market, let's just put it that way. A lot of gains and a lot of losses to be had in there. But stablecoin eliminates that risk and is basically a way for you to hold your currency in a position while you decide what to do with it next, or it gains interest. BlockFi, one of the exchanges, is currently offering a 9% return on what you hold in stablecoin. Professor, how many savings accounts are you aware of that offer a 9% return on?
I don't know, 30 or 40. No, I don't know. 9%.
You're lucky to get half a percentage.
Yeah.
9% is insane, and they'll honor up to 40,000. So you can put 40,000 US dollars in a stable coin today and earn 9% annually on it. I mean, that's incredible. There's no guarantee that 9% is going to hold forever, for sure, but there's a reason they're offering it. There's a lot of incentives for you to hold DAI, their currency, right? And as you do it, you get rewarded, and then you just exchange that down to your fiat. Me personally, not recommending, not financial advice. I've converted all of my own savings into stable coins. And I'm getting much better return than I would ever get in a savings account. And I'm that confident in the technology and in those stable coins to do that. Yeah.
So Jordan, what's that backed by? I mean, what's going to make it so that it's not just some huge Ponzi scheme?
So, depends on who you ask. Or it depends on which stable coin you're looking at. Tezos, for instance.
And if we want to, we can talk about this offline.
Well, I think it's an important point, because Tezos is one in particular that touts, there's some debate in the audit community whether or not this is real or not, but they tout that they have amassed essentially equivalent in US dollars backing their stablecoin. So they basically say, we've got at least $1 billion in US reserves sitting here that back this one-to-one transaction. And there are others that don't necessarily offer that. They're basically just saying, trust us. DAI has holdings. I don't think it's nearly as high as Tezos is, but enough that I feel confident. I mean, it helps that I don't have, $100,000. I wish I had $100,000, to play around with in my savings, but I'm not quite there yet.
Pressure real quick.
Yeah.
I think cryptocurrency is really interesting, but in regards to the blockchain aspect, I have a quick question. When it comes to like supply chain transparency, in regards to like suppliers and vendors and things like that, what role would blockchain have when it comes to those decisions on a public perspective? So for example, I will say I own stock in Hyundai, and they're having a different distributor. Based upon the blockchain, would I as an investor, if it's in a private blockchain, would I be able to have access to that private blockchain for my investment decisions? Or because I'm not actually in there, would I not have that right? And if for example, there's a legislation, I'm not saying regulation on crypto and blockchain, would regulation, government regulation by the US be back because the blockchain is so huge? Could I have access to that information?
I would say if it's in a private blockchain or consortium blockchain, it totally depends on if whoever's running it gives you access.
Okay.
Now, whoever's running it is also a little loose. If it's private, then it's definitely whoever's running it, because although the technology is decentralized, authority is technically centralized, because I'm the one that approves who's in it or not in it, right? In a consortium, it's usually done by vote of consortium members. So you have to be part of the consortium to get access to the information that's inside of the consortium blockchain.
And it's usually shareholders that are involved in them?
Yeah, you'll have shareholders. Oftentimes, consortiums will open it up to players that are willing to pay the entry fee. TradeLens, one of the most well-known, it is the most well-known, it was backed by IBM at the beginning and then splintered off to its own, is a basically trade blockchain consortium, and it was $250,000 to join it. So it sounded great if you were Maersk, who is one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, who, $250,000, like, hey, let's kick a couple of containers over, like, we'll find that kind of cash. But for a lot of the small players, in fact, that's the entire business model of Chango, is we do a lot of the same things as TradeLens does, I would argue better, and we offer it at a reasonable rate that all the small players can participate in the network, and we do it in more of a public sense as well. But it really comes down to, if you're going to participate in a private or a consortium, whoever's controlling the private network or the group that controls the consortium is in charge of who sees information and what their access level is.
Okay, cool.
Django, which we're going to talk about with my logistics side of things. And we're still good on time. With my company itself, a big thing with international trade is, you talked about wine being spoiled because of documentation earlier. That is a huge aspect of it. Although it is updating itself faster now, trade has largely operated like it was the 1700s until like 10 years ago. Like literally, you basically need like a wax sealed document, which would be your bill of lading, which is literally like saying, this is ownership of my cargo. Whoever holds this document literally owns my cargo. And you're just like, wax sealed document to this person, they break the seal, they open it, they sign their name, they're now the owners, then they seal it back up and send it to the next person, and it goes through the value chain. If there is any issue with documentation, if there is any error, if it does not arrive on time, whatever it is, no one's going to accept your cargo. It will literally sit in a boat or at the port until proper documentation is presented. Okay, physical, and so you can imagine DHL makes a lot of money, literally just ferrying documents across international trade players, right? And blockchain, well, I should say, we've had PDFs for how long? A long time, like 25, 30 years, depending on who you ask. We've had PDFs or equivalent of digital documents for a long time. Why don't we use them? Okay, you've started seeing them grow a little bit more with the electronic signatures becoming more and more popular, signatory, DocuSign, things along those lines. But by and large, digital documents are still met with a lot of skepticism, especially if it's just a PDF. If you just get a PDF, chances are you're like, wait, why isn't this through DocuSign or something like that? I don't know if I trust just signing this and sending this back. Because no matter how good Adobe pitches the software, there's security concerns there. Enough that people still stick to their wax seal approach to shipping documents. And that's where a lot of what we do with Chango is we basically allow you to digitize your documents. We do something what's called hashing those documents, or we basically create a digital identity of those documents, and we're storing that digital identity on the blockchain, where it cannot be modified, it cannot be touched, and so somebody else can now send a PDF, open that PDF, then look at the signature and be like, okay, this is the original, unmodified, authentic document. And therefore they can trust that there's no fraud being played here and carry on in the project. And that's a big part of what my company does, is help secure companies' documentation and international trade, facilitating a much, much faster process. If there is an error in documentation, you can send over a new document and be secure in the information and as soon as you can produce new documentation, right? Instead of the DHL, the waiting game, the bureaucracy of it. And if as the governments of the world improve their acceptance of blockchain technology and they're accepted by customs authorities, it speeds up the entire global supply chain by a tremendous amount. You won't have issues.
Amen.
What was that?
Amen.
Yeah, well, you won't have issues like what's going on in California, where you've got literally boats just sitting in the water for weeks at a time, waiting for a place to go down.
Poor Mattel can't give any Christmas gifts to the kids.
Yeah, exactly. Logistics is a huge thing. Medical field, a little shorter on time, so I'll go quick through this. But medical field, one of the most complicated aspects of medicine is your private medical information. Getting that in the hands of the proper doctors that need to see it, getting the approval to get information across different medical suppliers, things. If you talk to anyone in the medical field, they'll tell you straight up, it's a nightmare. It's not fun, it's not enjoyable. Doctors hate the systems that they have. It's got problems. Blockchain, assuming that you had, let's say, 2 hospitals that were on the same blockchain network, you could seamlessly transfer information and limit the viewership to that information to who needs to see it, or another thing which goes into digital identity, which I think, is next. You can make it so that, you have access to my records, but you need my thumbprint essentially to unlock it, right? So I give you consent to have this. Are we short on time?
Okay. Emergency, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to talk more. So
Yeah, it's fine.
give him a round of applause for me after he's done for me. On my
Anyways, but the ability to put information on a secure blockchain, so this wouldn't be on a public blockchain, this would definitely be a consortium blockchain, where you can isolate who actually can see information that are restricted, so it's not whoever wants to see my private medical information, you just have to know how to look. Consortium blockchain would allow a much better improved process. Digital identity in general, this is one of the largest pushes in blockchain technology. The idea of putting your driver's license in digital format, okay? Your passport in digital format. I literally, if I lost my passport, not only will that take tremendous time and money and everything else, I've got a visa. I went into China for literally a day, and the Chinese government does not like Americans, in case anyone was curious about that. And all of the Spanish people I were with paid like 40 euros for like a 10-day visa to Spain. I had the only option available to me as a US citizen was a $250 10-year visa to Spain or to China. So I've got a 10-year, now like 8 years left of a 10-year visa to China that I'm probably going to use hopefully like one more time in my life. But it cost me a bunch of money. I lose my passport, that's gone immediately. I got to buy it again. Digital passport would help solve a lot of those issues that they have there. And there's a lot of advantages to like a secure digital identity. There's reasons that this hasn't launched mainstream, and it's the amazing thing that we all think it can be, because there's lots of other issues that come into play, acceptance being a big part of that. MetaMask, if you are interested in blockchain at all, I would highly recommend tonight to open your Chrome browser, download the MetaMask extension and open up an account. With that, you can basically do anything that you want in a blockchain ecosystem. You can store currency in that account. If you're deeper and you're interested in developing, you can develop with that account. You can do a lot of different stuff with it. I highly recommend everyone get a MetaMask account. It's the first step in being involved in blockchain technology.
Is that similar to like a hardware wallet?
MetaMask?
Yeah.
No, it would be a hot wallet or a digital or web wallet.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. It's essentially a web wallet that you've got like a passcode seed and everything else to it. That just don't give out that seed because if somebody gets it, they'll steal your stuff. So be wary of that. But by and large, like for instance, I use MetaMask for Chango's official account. We do all of our transactions through our MetaMask account. Feel pretty confident in it. My personal stuff. I don't personally deal with MetaMask unless I'm developing or using a blockchain website. Like for instance, a lot of blockchain-based websites that are trying to launch, you go to the website itself and it'll instantly go, oh look, MetaMask is installed, you need to log into your account. When you log into your account, the website's automatically hooked to your MetaMask account. If you want to do a transaction, Guesser is one of these in a prediction market, which is one of our decentralized finance applications. There it is. Prediction markets, where if I want to bet on whether or not Donald Trump will win X election or if Hillary's going to win or whatever event, like if somebody, it's basically a betting market, right? And it's linked to my MetaMask. And so if I try to say, yes, I think this person will win this or this game's going to go this way, it'll say, okay, this is what the bet costs, this everything else, and it'll instantly connect to my MetaMask account. I put in my password, sign the transaction. It executes all the blockchain stuff right then and there, and then the payout goes straight to my MetaMask account as well. So MetaMask is like the first stage to being a bit more involved in things. Last one for my use cases, and then we'll do investing wrap up. I'm sorry, this got a little long. As you can see, I kind of like talking about this stuff. Anyways, digital assets. A lot of cases to be made for digitizing deeds to homes, cars, titles, all that kind of stuff. Having it in a digital, secure, blockchain-backed format that can be retrieved instantly. This is actually a big use case in a lot of African territories in particular, because it's maybe exaggerated a little bit, but a lot of more rural areas of some of the countries there, it's essentially the wild, wild west of who owns what property. Right? I say my property line goes to here, and good luck finding like the actual deed and the records of the local government that says, well, it's 400 by this, and this is where it is. Like it's apparently difficult enough, and they found that trying to transition local authorities to this type of model helps secure their actual territories and grid. So it's just one good asset of it, or use case of a digital asset. All right, last thing that I'll touch on is investing. If you are interested in investing, I'm a huge proponent of Coinbase. Biggest two reasons. One, they're one of the largest, more professional organizations. Two, they are regulated by the US government. So they will ask for your social security number to sign up, for instance. They don't actually care about your social security number. The US government makes them ask that information so that they can be confident that you're not trying to launder money.
Using 1099 if you do over a certain amount of
Yeah,
transactions.
and so they can come at you at the 10. Yeah, come get you. If you do a dollar amount or a certain level of transactions, they'll come find you. Coinbase, though, is, I think, the most secure. They do have higher fees than some of the other ones. I mean, not by much, but they definitely do have higher fees. So that's something to take into account. In my opinion, you really only have to worry about that if you're doing $10,000 transactions or high, big dollar transactions, then you're worried about that. Anything under that, it's all extremely relative. And so I would recommend Coinbase for you to start. I have made over $500 for watching videos on Coinbase.
Their earners are awesome.
Yeah, they're great. They have these, you'll see it when you log in, they have rewards. And it's literally like whatever cryptocurrency is saying, hey, learn about our cryptocurrency, why we exist, what the purpose of this coin is, this token is, and we'll give you, $3 worth of our cryptocurrency. Luckily, I did all these like 3, 4, 5 years ago, whenever it was, and then I just held on to the tokens, and then they all exploded in value. And so, I got like $3 for free for watching like 5 minutes worth of videos, and I sold it for like $150. worth of value, and I did that for multiple coins. But Coinbase has a lot of that. You'll get free rewards just for watching videos, so I think is great. BlockFi offers the returns we saw earlier. I'm staked on crypto.com. I use for Shiba Inu, which is one of the coins that I've invested in, and I earn 10,000 Shiba Inu coins a week off just leaving my coins in there, basically. But it's just a level of investing itself. But if you're interested, I would recommend here, the last thing that I'll state on this is just the differences. You have software that will handle wallet transactions. You'll have online wallets, which is like Coinbase would be this, or I guess Coinbase fit a bit more software. But you'll have MetaMask will be in here. Hardware wallets, you can literally store your blockchain history on basically a thumb drive. And then if you want to transact, so if you want to send or receive Ether or Bitcoin, you literally have to have your thumbstick inserted in the computer, enter in your password to access it and go. Major advantage that way more secure than an online wallet. Downside of an online wallet, again, somebody finds steals your passcode and they can hack your account. They can't do that with a physical wallet. Downside of a physical wallet, don't lose it. There was a guy in Ireland that had, when he bought it, wasn't worth anything, but now it's like the equivalent of something like 60 million pounds in Ireland, and he accidentally threw the USB stick out. And he literally said he would split the rewards with the local government if they let him halt all operations in the landfill and dig through the landfill for his USB stick. They didn't let him do it. So that money, gone. Gotta be careful on that. And then paper, which is the most secure. It's literally everything's stored on QR codes on a piece of paper, kind of thing like that. And not many people would do paper wallets. There's a few maximists that really hold to it strongly. But by and large, online or software are going to be the most popular ways to do it. They are the least secure, just in the sense that, again, phishing scams you can be susceptible to, or someone trying to steal your currency. I highly recommend trusting Coinbase. People will always say that not your keys, not your currency, in the sense that if you don't own the private keys to your wallet, it's technically not your cryptocurrency. It's technically Coinbase's currency that they're giving you authority over or access over, and there is truth to that. The true ownership of blockchain technology is having the private key to an account or a wallet. But in practical terms, 99.9% of people are going to be just fine with a Coinbase account or some equivalent to it. And you'll probably be plenty happy with it as long as you're not opening up all these suspicious emails and the same standards that you have protecting yourself that you're all probably aware of with anything else, your banking account information, anything else. As long as you use those same practices, you're going to be just fine. I have the majority of my stuff not in a hardware wallet. I'm advanced enough in crypto that I could do that and feel comfortable with it, but I'm forgetful. Straight up, I do not trust myself not to lose that USB stick. So I stick with these, and I've been just fine with them. Anyways, overview of blockchain technology. We hit a lot of different aspects of it. Hopefully there'll be opportunities in the future, and I'm happy to talk outside to go deeper into certain aspects of it, the technology side of it. There's hash rates. There's a lot deeper you can get into the actual technical aspects of blockchain. But I hope this gave you an understanding of kind of what it is, how it's being used, and if you are interested in being involved, seeing the many different areas or use cases where you can be involved, and you saw there's a lot of money to be made being involved in the blockchain ecosystem. So thanks for your time, everybody.